Hello, I'm Andrew Joseph Keith. I'm an artist and sculptor, and in this video I wanted to go over 5 visual tools or guides or ways of looking at parts of the body that will help you as an artist get better at figurative representation. So let's go ahead and get into it with the first visual, something to do with the nose, how the nose is and how the nose attaches, or how the nostrils attach to the septum, or this part, this fleshy piece of skin just below the nose that then attaches to the lip. So here I have an illustration of how that kind of pushes up. It's kind of a little hill that's pushed up, and then the nostrils clamp on like a C-clamp, where something is clamping down onto that septum and kind of pushing that up and out away from the face. The reason that this is so important is that people often represent this area of the mouth, whether they're drawing, painting, or sculpting, to be more flat or even sunken, when in reality there's a lot of roundness to it, and it kind of pushes out into space. There's a lot of roundness to the upper lip. This is something I go over in more detail in the lesson on how to sculpt the mouth. And I'll try to put a link for that somewhere up here if you're interested in that full lesson. And here's another angle where those nostrils are kind of clamping on to that nasal septum. It's a really important concept to grasp if you're drawing, painting, or sculpting the mouth and the nose. So for portraiture, this is really important. Okay, so that's number 1, something that I see people do incorrectly, and hopefully this visual will help in the future. Number 2 has to do with the hands. The hands are very tricky. A lot of people struggle with them for good reason. There's a lot of angles, joints, muscles, bones, tendons, and I call it finding the knuckles with the halves method, the 1/2 method. And so if you take the hand from the wrist to the tip of the middle finger, you divide it in 2, divide that distance in 2, that'll be about where the middle knuckle is. Now, some people have, larger palms and smaller fingers or larger fingers, but generally it'll be somewhere in the middle right there. Then if you divide the distance between that first knuckle and the tip of the middle finger again, you'll get the next knuckle about. And then again, take the distance from that knuckle to the tip of the finger and you have the last knuckle. And then if you divide that in 2 again, then you'll get where the fingernail is on the back of the hand. So that's called the halves method. So 1/2 to right there, half of that to here, the next knuckle, half of that to the next knuckle, half of that to the fingernail. Helpful thing to know where the knuckles are on that middle finger. Then you can follow the rhythms, like the rhythm that connects the tips of the fingers to locate the knuckles on the rest of the fingers. Kind of holds true with the other fingers as well. If you take half of this distance of the pinky, put it in half, and then half of that, half of that, half of that, it's pretty accurate as well. Now, it's not 100% accurate. Some of the parts are a little bit more or less than half. That's something that you have to pay attention to, but this halves method will get you pretty close to accuracy on representing the hands. This is really helpful to know when you're doing hand armatures, which I like to do for sculpting the hands. If it's a hand that's about half-life size or larger, I'll make an armature for it. And then being able to locate those joints ahead of time and pose the hand, your work is almost half done at that point. Now it's just adding the clay onto the armature. While we're on the topic of the hand, let's go over another visual that I've also found to be really helpful when representing the hand. And this one I call middle's pinky thumb. And it involves thinking about the hand as a gesture that goes from the forearm through the wrist to the middle 3 fingers of the hand. And thinking about the pinky and the thumb as separate entities with their own gesture. Just being able to follow the gesture to those 3 middle fingers, I found that that's a lot easier than trying to understand the gesture of the entire hand. So that's number 3. Number 3, middle's pinky thumb. Okay, number 4 is the gesture of the leg from the front view. This one's a little bit trickier than from the side view. Most artists know that there's kind of this S-curve gesture from the side view. Here's an illustration of that primary gesture of the legs, kind of the sweeping S-curve. Most people are aware of that, but the curve from the front view is a little bit more complicated. So here's a look at that curve. It's also kind of this S-curve that starts moving outward towards the upper leg, away from the center of the body, then it comes inward towards the knee, and then bows out again through the lower leg. So it kind of bows out, comes in at the knee, and then bows out again. And then there are a couple of muscle masses that are counter to this gesture. I call this in and out rhythm the primary rhythm. And then the secondary forms or secondary rhythms are the muscle mass on the inside of the leg and the inside of the calf. And these push out against that primary rhythm of the leg. So next time you're drawing the leg or sculpting the leg or painting the leg from the front view, if it's somebody that's standing with the leg extended, look for this gesture, the primary gesture of the leg, and then those secondary forms or secondary gestures of those muscle masses on the inside of the inner thigh and then the inside part of the calf. One of the legs is kind of pointed towards you, one of the legs is pointed away, and this way you can see the difference in how that gesture changes as the leg turns away from you. So you definitely see that in and out S-curve rhythm with that leg with the foot pointed towards the camera. And there's kind of some contrast between the curves and straights, looking for curves and straights, which is another helpful principle when you're working with figurative art. Here you can see that same gesture from behind. And the last one that I want to talk about is with the foot. And this one is thinking about the calf down to the foot as one gesture, and then the ball of the foot or the back of the foot, the calcaneus, as its own separate entity. So just like we did with the 3 fingers, we're thinking about the foot as a form that goes from the calf down to the toes. Added onto that form is the heel or the back of the foot. Because again, I feel like it's easier to follow that gesture than it is to understand the gesture of the entire foot at one go. For me, each of these ways of looking at the features was kind of an aha moment. It's hard to understand a part of the body and then you see something that just makes everything click and you're like, oh yeah, that is what that looks like, or that is how that feature exists or how to represent it. And these visual tools help whether you're drawing, painting, or sculpting. These visuals are from my ebook that's called An Artist's X-Ray Vision, the Male Figure. In this book, I just wanted to think about different artistic principles as colored lenses, glasses that you could put on, that if you put them on, you would only be able to see the gesture of the figure, or you'd only be able to see the anatomy, or you'd only be able to see the secondary forms or the surface forms. Each color represents a different artistic principle that I've found helpful as a figurative artist. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, if you like the visuals that you see here and you think more visuals would be helpful, I hope you'll check it out and consider purchasing it. But if there are 10 people that are interested enough in these type of diagrams that they would commit to getting an ebook of the female figure, I'll do another ebook. I'll start another ebook of the female figure with similar diagrams. You could just comment female X-ray vision. Well, that's kind of weird. What's a way you could phrase it that would be easy but not misconstrued? You just put female ebook or woman ebook, something like that. If there are 10 people that comment something along those lines, or be creative, think of your own thing, just communicate that, then I'll start the ebook on the female figure. If it's something that people are interested in, then I want to make it. I am working on other projects. I'm doing the hand sculpting course and getting ready for some upcoming sculpture shows and things like that. But I do like doing these diagrams. I think it is helpful. It's helpful for me to study the figure. So let me know in the comments below. If you have suggestions for upcoming videos, I'd love to hear about that as well. You can check out my sculpting courses, my figure sculpting course at proko.com/sculpture and my portrait sculpting course at proko.com/portraitsculpt. A huge thank you to everyone who has purchased those courses. Big thank you to anybody that supports me over on Patreon. I really appreciate it. Anybody that supports this in any way. It is difficult making a living as an artist, and so anybody that supports in any way financially is a big blessing for me and my family. So thank you, and stay creative, stay productive. I'll see you in the next video.